Etnyre International has grown from a small business into a leader in manufacturing. Tuesday, the Association of Equipment Manufacturers highlighted Etnyre's employees and products. WIFR reporter Alyssa Kelly talked with members about the importance of manufacturer workers.
I manufacture equipment that helps to build, feed, and power the world.
The Association of Equipment Manufacturers has been on its largest public engagement initiative in its 130-year history. AEM's Manufacturing Express Tour is traveling nationwide to share pro-manufacturing policies with companies like Etnyre and highlighting that company's workers.
The jobs that are here at Etnyre are some of 237 million manufacturing jobs that put in $38 billion to the state economy. And it's time for us to be celebrating what these people are doing within these facilities.
Etnyre International is a leader in building equipment for the asphalt road building industry. The company is celebrating 126 years in Oregon and is now known globally, selling products outside of the United States with more than 1,000 employees at 6 locations across the U.S. More than 400 of them are in Ogle County.
AEM coming here just tells that they believe in us, they believe in what we do, and it should mean a lot to our people who build this product.
Tuesday, the men and women who helped build Etnyre's equipment received recognition for products that help transform the industry.
What do we take for granted? The people who build these equipment, right? It takes a lot of hard work. It warms my heart to know that these people who work very hard make this stuff happen, which then benefits the entire society.
In Oregon, Alyssa Kelly, WIFR News.
Tuesday's event also featured an industry-themed online game available for employees to have a chance to win the grand prize, a Ford F-150.